But I don't want people to get the wrong idea about this book is that it's not just like shock value. It's not to just make you uncomfortable. There are a lot of glimmers of, profound truths to it. There's a lot of philosophy in it.
Yeah.
Um, One of the biggest philosophical elements of this book surrounds Jiddu Krishnamurti, who is an
Mm,
Indian philosopher. Um, and, his philosophy, contrary to like what we talked about in the past of, absurdism, nihilism, existentialism, all these ideologies, these philosophical ideas of like making sense of the world. Um, his approach is like there is no making sense of anything.
yeah.
The only thing to make sense of is yourself. And his whole takeaway is like having freedom from the known. So his big, you know, pontification of like existence and what troubles us is thought, but not so much thought as it is like the past. So
Mm,
we're either fixated on the past or we're either like we're either obsessed on the future, right? These two elements of thought. We're very rarely in the moment. Like we're existing, but we're at the same time we're so much in our heads
yeah.
that like moments that are happening are passing without us knowing. Like we're living most of our lives in our heads,
Yeah.
you know?
To the point where being present almost feels like anxiety sometimes, where you're just like, I've had those moments where you can spend 3/4 of a day just either thinking into the future of something you're working on or a relationship, whatever it is, and then you're thinking about things that you did in the past, and then you have like 30 seconds of just being in your own body.
Right.
And that's like a panic state where you're like, holy shit, like I spent the first 9 hours of today without actually noticing myself thinking, without being conscious of that stream of rivers of thought. And I wanted to go back to Jiddu. It's Jiddu Krishnamurti. That's how you pronounce it,
Yeah.
or
I
John
mean,
Krishnamurti.
yeah. Yeah. So
So
I
you
think,
texted me about him before before we started recording, and you said that he was a big element to the book.
yeah.
So this sort of this dichotomy between thinking about the future, thinking about the past, would you say that's his main underlying philosophy? What like the sort of like what underpins the outflow of his philosophical thought?
So what's really interesting about him is he was technically he started out in philosophy to examine theosophical elements. So something he wanted to explore the philosophy in connection with God, and then during his process or his learnings, as he said, he came to the conclusion that we have to reject all ideologies, including God. Um, and he came back to this whole overarching theme. And listen, he's been a philosopher. He died in the late '80s.
Yeah.
And he's been philosophizing, or he did for at least 30 years, and he had a lot of different takes. Um, but one of the crux of this book, or the nucleus of the philosophy of this book, is based on his teachings of the freedom from the known. And the character in the book is actually reading his book,
Mm,
Krishnamurti. One of the characters, his name is James, and we can talk a little bit about how I came to create this character. But he's reading this book and he's trying to help the protagonist, um, helping him distance himself from his thoughts. And he gives him this book, and there's elements to the book where he's reading it and you're learning about the philosophy, but then there's elements where it's indirect, where he's actually through the plot, he's getting obsessed with the past, or he's fixated on the future. So it kind of has that duality of it where it's like, he's learning about it, but he's actually living it. Um, but getting back to
yeah.
Krishnamurti, or however you want to pronounce his name. Y-
Krishnamurti,
yeah, dude,
the plural of the
that's
Krishnamurtis.
the thing about being a writer is like I only know what the words look like, but like when it comes to pronouncing them, like it's a whole other element to the game. Um, but I just found that during the time of writing this book that, I was very much into absurdism, um, with Albert Camus, and I found that Krishnamurti's sort of approach was a lot more logical, and the hypocrisy of it is Krishnamurti's is always about reject all ideologies, don't cling to anything. So it's like if you cling to his idea, it's like technically you're doing
Yeah.
what he said not to. But
You're like
it,
creating these mini deities from these philosophers
right,
along the way. And Krishnamurti's saying like, fuck all that, essentially, like create your own path.
yeah, but he's even like he rejects the fundamental elements of psychology where he's like I don't give a shit about, the conscious, the unconscious, or the subconscious mind. He's like, in psychology, they say you can't really access the unconscious mind. The subconscious mind, you kind of know behaviors and patterns and conditions from it. But he's saying that the more aware you can be with yourself in the present moment, he promulgates for this state of hyper awareness to understanding yourself. And I find that that is such a crucial aspect to just getting older,
Mm.
and, as we're on this quest for meaning, we tend to cling to religion or philosophies or, whatever else we wanna fill the void with, where I find that trying to understand yourself is the fundamental element of just like getting to your ultimate destination as a human, as a person. Um,
Does he talk about what examples of hyper aware states are, or does he define hyper awareness? Because I feel like it could be easy to confuse,
mhm.
anxiety with hyper awareness, or maybe that's a part of it. I don't know how he defines it, but what does he say is the state of hyper awareness?
So one of the things that he really kind of postulates is this idea of that we are constantly in fear. We are fearful beings, and not that we fear this, we fear that. We fear the unknown, right? But so we're constantly clinging to the known. Like every single so just to kinda it's very complex to understand, so I'm just gonna, like, kinda give you this
Yeah,
scenario.
give me the
Right.
dumbed down 5-year-old version. So I seriously, so I'll be able
So
to
right
bite on
now,
it. Yeah.
your existence, right? You're looking at me. Everything that you're saying right now is based on everything that you've learned in your life. You've been conditioned right now to ask certain questions or to perceive my answers or to everything everything about you is based on the past, right? You're a culmination of everything that's happened to you, right?
Mm,
But during that process, you've been conditioned to say certain things, to react certain ways, to give positive reinforcement and to either nod your head or to say yes or yeah. So what he's suggesting is to understand you've been conditioned, to understand your behaviors, your how you react to certain things,
mm,
and to try to like acknowledge that, but to exist in the moment as if you have no inclinations, if you have no intimations from the past, to exist in the moment without deriving anything from your past.
mm.
Like you're a fucking newborn baby right now.
So I feel like it sometimes.
Right?
When we were setting up the podcast, I was like, "Damn, I'm trying to get all the angles right." I'm like, I might have the brain of a 8-month-old baby right now,
I do have
trying
to
to set all
comment.
this up.
I do have to comment on you. That was the most impressive thing I've ever seen in my life. For
You need
all
to
of
get
yous at
out more.
home,
You're also a newborn father, so
yes,
you
yes.
haven't been out of the house much.
Oh,
The
dude.
next person you see on the street will be more impressive than me. I promise you that.
It was quite the spectacle
Yeah.
from everybody listening to this. Zach just came in here, he just redesigned the office, he moved stuff around.
Blew out a couple walls.
He's got more wires in here than you think that somebody's on their deathbed.
Yeah.
At any moment, this place could just catch up in flames.
Yeah, and I
So I'm fully
purposely I
prepared
put,
for that.
all the wires just, in a sequence that I can easily, if you say anything that goes against my conditioning, I could easily yank on the wires and choke you to restrict you from uttering words that I don't want you to say because it
He's
contradicts my conditioning.
he's got me sitting on a double-sided dildo as we speak
Yeah,
that could just shock me if I say the wrong thing. So I'm just trying to be.
that's true. It's one of those rocking chairs where, like, you rock back and the dildo goes up. So when you see Chris in the video version rocking back and forth constantly, it's because he's really enjoying
Oh
himself.
man.